Well, hey, it's Paulie here. That screeching you can hear is black cockatoos. Welcome to Perth. So, this is a brief addenda to my transgender history series. Practical history as it affects us. It may sound like a truism, but the health of a society can be measured by the way it treats its minorities. Now, I'm not just pulling that out of thin air, because treatment of minorities descends into oppression when that society is looking for ways of scapegoating its failures. With failing economies and the massive wealth inequality that we are seeing, literally those who hold the keys to power and those who have bought into their propaganda networks are looking for scapegoats. Anything will do, as long as the answer to why are people poor, why can't people meet their bills, as long as the answer to that is never because of the ruling class and the ruling system. Minorities have always been the scapegoat. That's why this ridiculous antisemitism thing has existed. This is why you'll always see the most absurd groups of minorities blamed for things so massively out of their control that it's just ridiculous. A society that beats its breast about moral decay is attempting to distract from its economic decay and from its political power imbalance in the system. Again, that's not just a bunch of leftist gobbledygook. It's demonstrable history. So let's have a look at what's happening at the moment, and let's just do a little walkthrough. There's a reason you're seeing anti-trans material at the moment. And this is to allow right-wing groups to take control of society. I don't mean take control of government, all of society, because those right-wing groups see the threat from the anger of people over economic inequalities. They desperately need the distraction. But it comes in stages. Now, you might have noticed the anti-trans campaigns very early on decided that they're going to hit the bathroom issue. That was actually the first thing they tried. These freaks shouldn't be in women's bathrooms. And they failed spectacularly at it. Because taking a pee is a very humanizing issue, and it is seen as a fundamental right. Everyone's got a pee. Sorry, are you just telling these poor people that they can't take a whiz? That failed to be a polarizing issue, and that crashed. But you've got to remember, there's a lot of money and power behind people who are attempting to defend a failing status quo. And that's where we got the women in sports. That's why it appeared. It's not an issue. There are no trans women in sports. Statistically speaking, we're just not there. We really aren't. There are so few of us, and this takes so much. Now, I'm telling you this as a kendo smegging champion, a tan kendo and ju kendo, bayonet fighting, knife fighting, sword fighting. I was competing in these. I can tell you, I'm it. I'm probably it for the world. That's it. I would be the only trans woman that was involved in that sport, probably in its entire history. I'd love to be proved wrong and see some sisters and brothers doing it now, but consider it unlikely. But the thing is, they started with, you'll notice, Olympic level sports. Because competing in very, very high level pro sports isn't a right, it can be cast as a privilege. And as a privilege, it's something we are allowing these people to do. Not that it's their right, we're allowing trans people in. And if it's a privilege that you've granted to someone, then it's on the table to try and say, maybe we should revoke that privilege because these people have abused it. That's where that argument has come from. Now, let's be straight. The UN statement on human rights absolutely say that we have the right to be in sports. We have the right to dignity, to privacy, to the best possible healthcare available. If you remove trans healthcare, if you block us, you are going against the UN Charter of Human Smegging Rights. But this is what they're trying to do. Once you've got a dialogue where it's okay to say trans women should have their privilege to be in upper Olympic level sports removed. Once that dialogue is going, and then, well, yeah, obviously, because the false data comes in that medals are being stolen from women by these vast hordes of trans women somehow in there. But now you can rock it down one level to American-style college sports, because unlike the rest of the world, Americans have like a professional level sports because they don't have an education system essentially, but you can get it down one tier. Now they're stealing for you in the next tier, because if you accept the first, it's a tiny, tiny move to the next. And then it comes down to all sports. Trans women and trans girls are stealing medals from your daughters in like high school PE. When you see something like J.K. Rowling's claiming that there are 900 medals have been stolen from real women by trans women, you've got to go and take a look at those statistics. And I will link you to a video that does this very, very well. Do tell her who sent you, she's lovely. But effectively, these people are, in those statistics, they're putting things like literally frisbee tossing, TV shows like Jeopardy, I've got them in there as sports, and they're classing literally children's PE in primary schools as medals. This other video I'll link you to will walk you through the entire very carefully constructed lie that has been done to this. But why do this? Because once you've walked down from that being in sports as a privilege that trans women have been allowed to trans people are stealing from your daughters, now we're dehumanized. Now we're thieves. And that's why they could go back to the bathroom issue, because the bathroom issue is vital. Now, thieves can be denied access to pee, because now these people are not human. They don't have a right to pee. We've established they're not normal, they're not people, they don't deserve rights. They're not honestly in that bathroom. If they're thieves, then they're everything. It's easy now to say that these people are rapists, which is why they're in the bathroom. Not trying to take a tinkle. And the fact that I sincerely doubt there's been a rape by a trans woman in a bathroom in the history of humankind. But I've fought off a couple of rapes in bathrooms from cis men, and I'm sure this is a very, very common story if you talk to other trans people and other cis women. Cis men are the danger, not trans women. But it's important. The sports enable them to roll to the bathrooms. And someone that is forbidden to be in a bathroom is not human. It's an animal. It's a subhuman thing. And that's why it's so important to them. Because now we're not human. We are now outside of the normal, acceptable human populace. And that's why you can now get to the campaign to remove healthcare for transgender kids. Because now thieves and rapists don't deserve healthcare. Thieves and rapists are people who will convince children to somehow join their cult. And that's why that's the next phase. You had to lay those foundations first. And it's the next vital step, because if puberty blockers and transgender healthcare for the trans youth is removed, then that marks trans people as basically molesters of children. We molested your children. We forced this stuff on them. So now we've gone from not having human rights to not actually being fully human to being enemies of the state. And that is why this is so important to them. Because remember, written anti-trans literature such as the transsexual empire, which is the basis of TERF ideology and the basis of so much of this campaign, it said from the very start, the aim is the total eradication of transgenderism from the human race, period. So that's why these fights are important. And that's why we need your help. Now, I'd love to be able to give you a clear solution. I'm a historian. So let me run some things past you. There are different fantasies that people place through their head. The American right wing, their fantasy are death camps. You can see it in their language, you can see it in their legislation. Nazi death camps are their fantasy. When they tell you that they want trans people killed and locked up and they want people put in camps, believe them. When somebody tells you who they are, believe them. That is their fantasy. Oddly enough, a hard one to implement because you actually need the agreement of the population. The Holocaust did not happen in isolation. The German populace helped. They turned in their neighbours, they turned a blind eye to all of it. That's how a Holocaust happens. But that's that fantasy. Now, I see a lot of the revolution must come, etc. from people. Now that fantasy, that's a very French Revolution fantasy, or indeed Russian Revolution fantasy, that somehow an armed proletariat is going to rise up and overthrow these bastards. Now, this has never worked out well when it's happened, but it has at least caused change, so God bless it. But I don't see that happening because of the polarisation of society and indeed the passiveness of liberals. Liberalism has taken over the left, and liberals have never gotten anything done in the history of fucking humanity, I absolutely assure you. So this is kind of the weird Spartacist fantasy. Other people, they have what I call the Marquis fantasy. Lucky groups of individuals will fight, blowing shit up and fighting our oppressors. A Marquisate does not achieve anything French resistance, World War II resistance had to have the backing of actual foreign states behind them to survive, and they were contributing to larger military efforts to overthrow fascist regimes. So again, not really a good fantasy. But I'm going to tell you something. So, check out the Battle of Cable Street. This is the moment when fascism in Britain in the 30s was turned back. So Oswald Mosley and his British Union of Fascists were getting traction, and they decided that they were going to do a mass rally in London. And they were met by the people of London. Now, this was the British Communist Party, the British Independent Labour Party. All of the leftist parties got their people together, and the local working classes and middle classes came out onto the streets to join them. The population blocked the streets and fought the fascists back. Read up on it, it's brilliant. But again, fascism was only destroyed in the end because Germany became an enemy of the British state. The British state was in fact supporting Mosley's rights to have armed mobs on the streets. But let's forget Stonewall for a moment, and I will do some history videos on these. Let's look to some other places, like the Compton's riot. I'll do a video on this, but essentially, in 1966 in San Francisco, a group purely of trans women, just trans women, had suddenly gotten an identity. They realised that they were a community, they realised that being transgender was a thing, and there was nothing to be ashamed of, and they suddenly became proud of who they were, and they became politically active. And the next time police came to try and oppress them, they fought back. And in doing that, they forged a community which lasts to this day. Laws were changed, things happened because a bunch of trans women fought back. Now, fighting back is important, and this is going to have to come, well, in two different ways. I'm going to talk largely to trans women because trans men, I love you, but the patriarchy does give you a pass. You are my brothers and I love you. I'm going to talk specifically to trans women here. I need you to be seen. I need you to be seen. I know you're in physical danger. You're going to have to actually fight or go. If you do only one thing each day, I want you to go outside. I want you to go outside dressed the way you want to be dressed and seen the way you want to be seen. I want you to go down to your local coffee store and buy a coffee and talk to some random strangers and say hello. I want you to go to the supermarket and just say hi to people as you pass. I want you to be a known face in your neighborhood, an ordinary face. Someone that's just there. Not a thief that's stealing someone's trophies. Not a monster that's somehow stalking people's bathrooms. Not some strange person that's corrupting youth. A person drinking coffee, buying groceries, sitting in a park, just saying hi. You need to do that. We need to make ourselves ordinary, because you can't demonize something as easily if it's ordinary. For all of our cis allies, for trans men, for the trans community, the other bit is vital. Resistance only works with an alliance into political parties. I need you to go to your local town hall open days. When they say they're having a town hall meeting, you must be there and you must speak out against all of this. And you must demand that people who are saying trans youth need to be denied their health care, You must demand that the actual medicine and science be followed, not the things that these people are using with their falsified reports. You have to demand it, because we have to win back that ground where we're being painted as destroying youth. And you must protest against the bathroom laws, because it's making a law against a thing that has never happened. We're protecting women from being raped by people who, quite frankly, take hormones, which means we're not really very capable of that. But that must be fought, because then we're not rapists. And you have to fight the sports thing, because when you fight that, you bring pressure against the argument that trans women are all thieves here to deceive and take from ordinary people. They've done this 1, 2, 3, and they've done it for a reason. And we have to take it back. Probably in reverse order. There's going to be a series of protests at the moment defending the rights of trans youth. Sorry, wind. These are important. Attend those rallies. Be loud. Be vocal. But you've got to write to your local politicians. You've got to go to those town meetings. You've got to be active advocates on the web, fighting misinformation wherever it turns up. We can beat these people, but we have to be active. Resistance only works when we have the backing of political systems behind us, which means local political candidates have to be made to nail their colours to the mast and make statements in support of the community. And this only happens if they think it's going to cost them votes. The Australian Labor Party at the moment, we can see them keeping away from making statements in support of the trans community, because they've looked at the UK and think, maybe, just maybe, there might be votes in selling the trans community down the river instead of supporting them the way they've always said they will. We've got to show these bastards that if you do that, we will end you. It's got to be pressure in the political arena. And that means pressure from the population. Now, pressure can also be economic. Do not purchase from businesses that are anti-trans. Do not purchase from businesses that give money to conservative candidates and conservative causes. Be very, very circumspect about supporting any religious figures or organisations whatsoever. Some of them support, but often this is minority support. It's great that there are some Anglican ministers which want to support trans rights, but they need to be held over the fire to make themselves fight their own ecumenical councils which are issuing anti-trans statements. In their case, that pressure has to come from the bottom upwards in their organisations as well. Compton's, Stonewall, Battle of Cable Street. Resistance comes from the bottom up, and that's what we have to do. No one's going to save us but us. And it's important, because look where the conversation has gone already. Now that trans people are successfully being banned and being destroyed, the conversation's moved on. Now they're talking about, a lot of African women, they have special advantages in sport as well. Maybe they should be stopped from competing with decent white women. It's already gone there. It's already there. The door is open and it's happening. Because if it happens to the spearhead group, which is always transgender, the point of this is never LGBTQ. That's just the beginning group that is essentially slaughtered. The next is always racial. Without exception, it will be racial groups other than white, and it will be women, always women that are crushed down. Fight it now or suffer it forever. Those are your choices. That's it. Personal acts of courage are needed. I'm sorry if you feel threatened, but now is not the time to stay at home. Fight.